We're back. It's episode 7.
Welcome, listeners. Are you having fun?
Yeah, what are you up to, listeners?
Are you listening in your car?
Are you listening while you paint portraits of your stuffies?
Erin is saying that because last week the two of us got together and painted portraits of our stuffies.
Yes, highly recommend. In fact, we should share those portraits on the Good American Novel Instagram, which, are you following us there? If you're already on Instagram, come and follow us there.
Yeah, and you can post a beautiful portrait of your stuffies and tag us, or you can draw fan art of the goats and tag us, or you can...
Or, if you're not on Instagram, because honestly, Instagram is a black hole of doom, then just drop us a line. Email us and let us know who you are out there, listeners. We'd love to hear from you, and we'd love to hear your questions. We're going to be keeping a little directory of your questions to answer in a bonus episode sometime. And while you're at it, please share this podcast with a friend. It helps our audience find us. Okay, Ursula, I hope our listeners know this is a series. Start at the start. And what's going on in the plot?
Well, with FM gone on her seaside vacation, the goats of the farm have immediately started pushing the boundaries of their normal behavior. Some babies got out, wandered pretty close to the historic Westerly barn, and heard the roar. And the yearling and kid goats got together, discussed demonic possession, and contacted the spirit of goat legend Ruby Onehorn.
Yes, who can forget the enigmatic message from Ruby? Tings in de barn.
Do you think they really contacted Ruby, or was it just random? Like, that could have been a random assortment of letters.
Are you kidding me? Did you hear the ghostly electricity cackling in that episode? Of course they really contacted Ruby.
Okay, I thought so. Just checking. We also saw another ghost. FM's old cat Gratzo, sort of emerge from the land of beyond and show up as a ghost for the first time, only to immediately get embroiled in sibling rivalry with Pearl.
As a resident pet expert, I can assure the listener that dogs and cats do indeed engage in sibling rivalry.
Yes, and apparently that's true even for cats who are now ghosts. And Gratzo, the ghost cat, did a little exploration of the old FM radio himself.
Don't forget the old gramophone, which completely checks out. If I was a ghost cat, I would absolutely haunt an antique radio record player.
Yeah, imagine the ghostly ectoplasm whiskers acting as antenna. If the ghost cat was sitting on your radio, you could hear ghost radio stations. Man, that's a tongue twister.
Is this a content warning?
No content warnings. All that happens this episode is Sawyer does the chores.
That's it?
Well, he takes his time doing the chores because he sort of has to do...
literature.
Yeah, chores and literature. And there's a mention of a cryptid.
A literary cryptid?
I see you've met Sawyer. Yeah, he talks about frightening literary cryptids. And we also see the kid goats converge in unusual pairings. And little Goatina and Big Silver, well, they seem to be on the threshold of an adventure.
Let's get to the chores, Ursula.
To the chores!
The morning after FM left, Zipnog the squirrel stood waiting in the hazelnut tree. Something was wrong. Her tail twitched. Her ears twitched likewise. Where were the sounds of the farmer's feet on the floor? Where was the big scary water whoosh and the clicks and clinks and clatters? Where was the smell of bread burning? Where was the human farmer's mysterious morning howling, warbling out the window with the steam of the bitter drink? For the first time ever, there was none of it coming from the little cabin long after the sun had risen. There was no sign of the farmer. And if there was no sign of the farmer, there could be no sign of the brown. Zipnog sighted a slight branch, one that would probably just hold her weight. More importantly, it would allow her to peer into the cabin window. She dropped down to the branch and clung to it. As it bowed under her weight, she turned her head to look in the window of FM's cabin. It was dark. The only sign of life within the cabin was the pitiful moaning issuing from the horrible dog, who lay sadly all alone on a rug on the floor. Zipnog broke out in a light sweat.
No farmer? No brown? No brown?
Far away, at a breakfast table at a seaside cafe, FM stared out over the sun that was coming up over the water. She was stirring the foam into a mocha latte with a tiny silver spoon, taking time to enjoy the way the pink and gold morning sun lit up the steam and the pretty silver handle on her spoon. Well, it's got to be a chocolate Jesus, she sang. Makes me feel good inside. Gotta be a chocolate Jesus. Keeps me satisfied.
Strangers in the night, exchanging glances, wandering in the night. What were the chances we would share a love before the night was through?
Sawyer, it's nearly 8. FM always has her chores done by 9, and her dog surely needs to go out.
Sawyer didn't look up from his morning newspaper, which he was reading on his tablet.
Mom, did you know that illegal exotic animal ownership is up by 300% compared with 10 years ago?
That's lovely,
Millicent said.
I wonder if we should keep peacocks, albino peacocks, for roaming throughout the gardens.
What? Mom? No, it's not lovely. This is a serious problem. Trafficking in exotic species is becoming a huge business, and it's driving endangered species to extinction.
Did you know there are albino types of all animals?
Don't say albinos. It's animals with albinism. But Mom, that's not the point.
What about baboons with albinism?
Little Arcturix, who was playing with his tiger stuffy pork rinds under the table, popped his head up.
Baboons? Baboons? Those giant monkeys with the blue butts?
Millicent and Sawyer glanced at him.
Yes,
Millicent said.
Great apes, kiddo. Not monkeys.
Sawyer corrected kindly.
Well, they have really a great big teeth,
Arcturix said nervously.
maybe a puppy.
Millicent ignored all this.
Do you think baboons with albinism still have blue noses? Can you imagine a pack of all-white baboons living in the rose bushes, peeking their blue noses out from the foliage?
Well, Mom, I can imagine that, and it would be too scary for me.
Millicent passed her youngest child a digestive biscuit to quiet him.
But wouldn't it be picturesque? I'd have to plant all new roses to coordinate.
Mom, please tell me you're not actually thinking about this. Did you know there are more tigers living in captivity in the US than there are in the wild in Asia? This is a perfect symptom of late-stage consumer capitalism. Bored, upper-middle-class people with disposable income and nothing meaningful to spend it on, trying to establish some kind of identity and purpose to their lives by purchasing ever more outrageous possessions. Suddenly, you have dentists keeping lions in their basements.
Millicent waved her hands in the air as if to dispel Sawyer's talking.
Sawyer, really? It's time to let out FM's baboons.
And she picked up a rosebush catalog. Arcturix's head popped back up, eyes brimming with alarm.
FM has baboons now?
FM doesn't have baboons. Promise me you're not serious about baboons, Mother.
Millicent handed him a bucket of kitchen scraps for FM's pigs.
What about just one albino peacock, dear?
Mother, Are you objectifying white peacocks? It's a skin disorder that probably comes with health problems. You're not picking out peacocks out of a Ralph Lauren catalog.
Just 2 beautiful white peacocks, moving dreamily through a forest of snow-white roses. Just 1 mated pair. We'd sell the babies.
Sawyer took the slops bucket, stomped into his muck boots, and headed for the door.
Peacocks can't hatch chicks, Mother. Only peahens can do that. And my vote is no. And stay off Instagram. I think it's rotting your brain.
Millicent watched him go.
Stay off Instagram, my son tells me. It's a terrible thing when your children start giving you orders. You'll never do that to me, will you, Archie?
Arcturix just stared back at his mother. And then he got up to go and fetch his slingshot and head outside. Sawyer found Pearl lolling desperately on FM's bed. She barely lifted her head when he opened the door.
Come on, Pearl. Good morning, girl. I know your mom is away, but we still have to do the chores. I need your help to keep all the animals in line.
Pearl drooped off the bed, her goose egg throbbing where Mama Chi-Chi had hit her the day before.
Good girl.
Sawyer stroked her kindly.
You're going to be my right-hand dog while FM is away. We're going to become good friends.
He patted her again and opened the door.
Like Indiana Jones and his hat.
He stepped outside and waited for Pearl to follow him.
Well, actually that's not a perfect analogy.
He went on.
Because a hat is an inanimate object, and you're a dog. Where do we go first, Pearl?
Pearl led the way to the chickens, where Sawyer opened up the coop and scattered the scratch and peck mix, as FM had shown him. Uncle Rusty, the rooster, was very surprised to see someone other than FM providing the food and water. Would this someone new also provide the moment of searching existential eye contact? Uncle Rusty fluttered his wings impressively and aimed one beady black side eye directly at Sawyer, ready to brag non-verbally about his 16 wives.
Oh, hello, Chanticleer. You're a handsome fellow, aren't you?
Uncle Rusty was immediately discomfited by this new fellow calling him Chanticleer and declining the invitation to lock eyes.
Chanticleer is the traditional default name of all roosters.
Sawyer explained.
It means clear singing. It actually dates back to the name of a rooster in a French medieval epic poem called Reynard the Fox, which I chose not to do my term paper on medieval literature on, just because I didn't know enough French to work form the original source material.
Sawyer shook out the last of the scratch and peck, called,
"See you tonight,"
and closed the gate. Uncle Rusty turned to his nearest wife, a crested Australorp hen.
What was that all about? You tell me, Chanticleer.
She chuckled. Zipnog the squirrel had watched the dog and the strange new human leave the cabin. Her tail flicked once. Twice. She looked down at the cabin. The window of the cabin was open. Zipnog did not think she had ever seen the window open before. She ran down the length of her alder branch. She was not close enough. She needed to get closer. She needed to know what was going on. She spied the peach tree that was right outside the cabin window. She narrowed her eyes. She did not want to go on the ground, but she could not reach the peach tree by leaping. She looked hard at the cabin window. Within was only darkness, silence. What was going on in there? Where was the regular human?
What's going on in there? Where's the regular human?
Suddenly, from the window, a whiff of the brown caught her nose like a fishhook. Her tail flicked.
The brown? teensy, weensy hint of the brown?
She ran to the ground and fast as lightning crossed to the peach tree and was soon on a branch right next to the open window. She put one paw on the windowsill. She put a second paw on the windowsill. She never would have had the courage to do this, or the need, if FM had been around. She leaned her head in. She sniffed. She sniffed again. Yes, there it was. Her hunger for the brown made her senses sharp, and she was able to detect just the faintest ghost of yesterday's brown, but it was undoubtedly coming from inside the cabin. A squirrel knows when to be still and when to make a move. This was time to make a move. Pearl, meanwhile, was leading Sawyer as he gathered and carried the boxes of expired grocery food to the pigs.
Hello, pigs. Wow. Looks like today you're getting a case of heavy cream, a whole lot of cabbages, and wow, so many expired boxes of chicken chow mein from the lunch counter. That looks good. What lucky piggies.
He began opening the cartons of heavy cream and pouring them into the troughs. And all three pigs put their front trotters right into the trough and started slurping up the cream as it came cascading down.
Oh, wow, you are eager. I've never taken care of pigs before. Oh, easy there. Pigs, hey! You need to leave me space to pour it. Otherwise it goes right into your heads.
The pigs only shoved in tighter, pushing at one another to bring their back legs into the trough, until there was no space of trough that wasn't filled to bursting with pig, and Sawyer was forced to let the cream run down over their pink heads, bathing them in their own food. None of the pigs seemed bothered by this situation. They only slurped and lapped up the cream, in the air, off one another, among their own feet. One of the souls took an experimental bite to the boar's cream-coated ear.
Oh, wow, don't bite your... Wow. I guess I can see why George Orwell chose pigs to star in his allegorical novel, Animal Farm.
Sawyer paused and looked thoughtfully at the horizon.
Animal Farm is an allegorical novel, but it's really about the Russian Revolution. See?
He began. Pearl sighed and leaned heavily against his leg. Her head hurt. She missed FM. The new human used a lot of unfamiliar words like allegorical and revolutional. Pearl didn't know what they meant, but none of it seemed to mean treats or playtime or herding time or anything good.
The Russian Revolution,
Sawyer went on thoughtfully. The pigs glanced up at him. The cream was all gone now, and the new human was only standing there, empty boxes in hand. They squealed encouragingly, and he put down the cream boxes and began moving. They could smell the boxes of yesterday's lunch counter chicken chow mein that was now slowly opening and consolidating in a bucket.
I actually spent a whole semester at my political literature survey class at the university studying Animal Farm. What's really fascinating is that Orwell never tells you that the farm represents Russia, and the farmer is the Russian royal family, and the pigs are the communists.
He poured the lunch counter chicken chow mein into the trough, and the pigs went wild.
Technically, all that happens in the book is that a bunch of pigs rise up, make a bunch of speeches, and then lead all the animals in an invasion of the farmhouse.
Pearl whined nervously.
They kick the humans out and start sleeping in the farmers' beds and eating the farmers' food.
Pearl bumped her body against Sawyer's knee. He should not be saying these things to the pigs. Pigs should not sleep in FM's bed. Pigs should not eat FM's food.
And then basically the pigs start running the farm and basically become the farmers. Ow! Pearl, you bit me. Why did you bite me? Pearl, That's my pants, not a toy.
Pearl hadn't meant to hurt Sawyer, but she definitely did need to get him away from the pigs. She had her mouth on a grip of the fabric of Sawyer's jeans, and she pulled him away from the pig trough.
Okay, I guess it's time to feed the goats. Well, bye for now, pigs. Anyway, it's all a metaphor for the Russian Revolution, which was a total bloodbath and a failure, but also, in my opinion, necessary.
Pearl yanked on his jeans, and there was a ripping noise.
Okay, Pearl, I'm coming.
Behind his retreating back, the pigs looked at one another with their beady, intelligent eyes. Zipnog flew from her perch on the windowsill, knocking down one of FM's collectible porcelain goats as she went. It hit the floorboards at the same moment that she did, and the full-body twitch that responded to the shattering sound contributed to the upward velocity of her rebound bounce. Nose still pointed toward the hint of brown. Zipnog flew onto the table, scattering the salt and pepper shakers. But she was close to the brown. She knew it, and she was on the move, squirrel style. She ran the length of the table and leaped into FM's open pantry shelf. There was a lot of stuff in there that wasn't the brown. It was very annoying how many jars and bottles of various liquids and paste and other substances she had to throw on the ground before she saw it. On the back row. The brown. So much of it. A whole great tub of it. As tall as her tail. If Stephanie, the yearling goat, had been there with her, she would have been able to sound out the word on the label. Nut, L-A, family, size. But they wouldn't have known what it meant. None of that would have mattered to Zipnog. She knew well enough what it was. She read it with her nose. She pounced on it, paws and teeth outstretched. She bit down on an unexpected hardness, but that was fine. It was just a shell, wasn't it? And squirrels are well equipped to deal with shells. Zipnog made short work of the clear, strange shell. She chewed off and spat out bits of it until there was a hole big enough to push her head right through. Then she opened her mouth, pushed her head right through, and was one with the brown, as much of it as she could imagine. Pearl brought Sawyer to the goats with increasing anxiety. Goats were stubborn, unhurtable. No fence could ever really hold them all in for long. Goats' brains were already boiling over with bad ideas. Pearl knew that well enough. And her head still throbbed from yesterday's thunderbutt from the herd queen. Goats did not need any encouragement from talkative farm boys, whose heads, apparently, were as full as goats were, with bad ideas. But, to Pearl's surprise, Sawyer merely doled out the grain and stood silent, leaning on the fence to watch the goats eat. Pearl stayed well away from the fence line. Her head throbbed every time she looked at Mama Chi-Chi. The goats finished their grain, and they looked up at Sawyer in the way of goats, seeming to ask, "What next? Grain is fine, but what else? Will you let us into the garden? Have you at least brought us any broccoli? Let us check your pockets." A nervous whine escaped Pearl. Sawyer was just standing there. He should not stand that way in front of goats. They could sense his weakness. He did not inspire their respect and obedience the way FM did, or the way she, Pearl, could, if only FM would let Elmer train her in the ways of herding. The goats were watching him. Pearl could just hear them thinking their bad thoughts. They could easily crash through the gate. They could knock him to the ground with just one of Lady Baba's notorious horn tosses. They could overtake the orchard, eat every last one of FM's prize pumpkins. They could strip the bark from the apple trees. There! Mama Chi-Chi was eyeing the fence. Pearl looked up at Sawyer. Woo! She tried to warn him, but his eyes were glazed over. Mama Chi-Chi bleated inquiringly. Buh!
Chupacabras!
Sawyer suddenly said, pointing at the word in the air with his left index finger. Woo? Pearl asked. Buh? Mama Chi-Chi echoed.
Chupacabras, the goat sucker. I was trying to remember the name. I learned all about it in my contemporary mythology class. The chupacabra, whose name literally translates to goat sucker, is fascinating because it's the first truly modern monster. Cryptid, technically.
Buh?
While vampire and werewolf mythologies have their roots in misunderstood medical phenomena of the Middle Ages, the chupacabras did not appear in the historical record until the 1990s, when it went on its first spree, killing thousands of goats on the island of Puerto Rico. Each victim was left with mysterious puncture wounds and was drained of blood.
Pearl looked at the goats. The goats were not looking at the gate anymore. They were not demanding broccoli or planning an assault on the orchard. They were standing there, just standing there looking at Sawyer with their eyes wide open, and Pearl could smell the fear rolling off them. Now this was more like it. Sawyer was warmed up now.
Not long after the attacks began, I feel like I'm actually practicing for when I'm going to be a college lecturer. It's a good thing you all can't understand me, otherwise this would scare the dickens out of you. Anyway, class, as I was saying, not long after the attacks began, local residents began to report sightings of the chupacabra itself. Some reported a creature that was a half lizard, half human, walking on its hind legs but covered in scales. Others reported a sort of humanoid dog with blue skin. In some versions, the beast had horns on its head or spikes on its back. The only consistent detail, really, was the draining of blood from thousands of goats.
Pearl gazed up at Sawyer, flooded with admiration.
Meh!
Goatina, the littlest goat, broke the caprine silence with a wailing bleat of pure terror. Bah! Lady Baba added. Sawyer chuckled nervously.
Don't worry, little cutie. It didn't just kill goats. It went after chickens and rabbits, too, and I think maybe sheep. It only prefers goats. I guess that's not very comforting.
He patted Goatina awkwardly through the fence.
Well, anyway, you can't understand anything I'm saying,
he assured her. Pearl gave an excited little hop.
Now go in the fence, she thought. Now they're properly frightened. And we go in and I round them up and...
Well, I'll check in on you tonight,
Sawyer said, then turned on his heel and walked away. Dandy lay on her back in the field, far from the other goats. Dandy had been born exactly 6 months earlier, in a damp spring field bursting with the blossoms of yellow dandelions, hence her name. Now the grass was bleaching into a dull gold color, all gone to seed. "Tings in the barn," she bleated quietly to herself. She was thinking of the night before. Clearly, the yearlings were ridiculous. Dandy did not believe that they understood half of what they said, not even Minerva. Yet, something was happening. Was something truly in the barn? She could still scarcely believe that Stephanie could really understand human writing. Yet, something had happened. Her sensitive little hooves could still feel the electric zap, could still feel the iron horseshoe moving of its own accord, spinning round and round the Western Star farm sign. Dandy looked thoughtfully up at the trees looming above her, and she saw that they were changing. A breeze broke through the late August heat just then, and it rippled the coarse black hair along her spine. The air was different, too. It carried a new smell, something deep and sweet, something damp. Things in the barn, she thought again, or tings in ta barn. Her tiny hornbud gave a little itchy pulse of growing pain, and she angled her head back to get a little relief by rubbing it against the hard ground. Her eye, pointed at a new angle, saw a spider run down the lines of its net to wrap up a dry brown grasshopper that was caught in the lines of sticky rope. "Hey, Dandy! Dandy! Where you at?" Dandy heard this right before Mangoat's front hooves came flying across her field of vision, used her stomach as a trampoline for her next legendary baby goat sproing, then flailed to do a turnaround in midair and came crashing to rest right on top of her. A tangled pile of cousin limbs.
"Oh, there you are. There's this new thing called a chuprabra. It sucks goats, it has blue horns, and it killed thousands of goats on an island, but now it's swimming off that island and no one really knows what it looks like, or even though everyone's seen it."
What?
"It's probably definitely the ting that's in the barn, but it's also the same as that 8 legs you warned us about, because it's a sucker type. It sucks goats. That's what chupacabra means. But it has 4 legs and walks like a human. No one really knows what it looks like, but get crack off me."
Dandy managed to squirm out from under her cousin and get to her hooves.
"What are you talking about?" "The chupacabra. Some say it has spikes down its back and leaves 2 holes in its victim."
Dandy cracked Mangoat in the head, but in a friendly way to help her clear it.
"What is the thing? Did you see it?" No, that human Billy told us about it, but it's probably definitely the ting that's in the barn."
She paused, cracked Dandy's head, then springed around to face their own goat barn.
"It sucks goats! Come on! We gotta get out of here!"
"Mangoat, slow down. When did you hear about this?"
"Just now! We gotta go to the barn!"
"Mangoat, stop. We have to think this through."
"Things in the barn," Ruby said, or we think she said it. We don't know if the yearlings can really read,
Or if that sign thing even works. Even if it's all true. And tings into barn means things in the barn. Which barn? Our barn where we sleep? The neighbor's hayloft we were in with the yearlings last night? Or the older barn? The one you and Silver said you saw yesterday? We gotta think about these things.
"I hate it when you say that!"
At the very same moment that Mangoat was seeking her cousin Dandy, Goatina was seeking Silver. There was a little room on the side of the goat barn, where FM kept the hoof trimmers and fence stretchers and blackberry clippers. It was a windowless, dark little room. It smelled like mildewy saddle leather, and worst of all, the goat treats were in here, but locked up in metal trash cans no goat could open. Goatina had been everywhere else, and Silver hadn't been in those places. This was the last place to look. Goatina peered into the gloom.
"Silver? You in here?"
"Go away."
"Silver, what are you doing in here? I've been looking all over for you."
"Why would anyone look for me? I'm a coward. I'm finished." Goatina's little white socks lit up the darkness as she walked over to where Silver was sulking in the corner.
"What are you talking about?"
Goatina gave Silver a timid nudge, not quite a butt. Goatina was the smallest of this year's kids, the smallest by a long shot. She'd been too weak to stand up and nurse in the hours following her birth, and she'd had the wasting sickness in her first week of life. FM had bottle-fed her and carried her around in a baby wrap when things had been particularly bad. The vet had told FM that Goatina wouldn't survive, but FM had fought for her life, as had her mother, Mama Chichi. And here she was, 5 months later, happy to be alive on the farm, happy to be eating hay and blackberry thorns every day. She didn't mess around with dogs, and she didn't usually stray from the herd, and
She certainly didn't butt goats who were bigger than her, which was all goats. But now she felt something she had never felt before. She didn't have words for this new feeling, but the feeling was this. It was the need to know something, to do whatever it takes to know that thing.
What are you talking about, Silver? You're no coward.
Didn't Mango tell everyone everything?
She said you guys went out yesterday and you ate a big giant orange apple and then you heard a really scary roar.
That's all she said.
Well, you know how she talks. You can't really make sense of it. That's sort of what she told us anyway, right before the yearlings got out Ruby One-Horn's ghost talking board, which is actually what I came to talk to you about.
She didn't tell you that I ran away like a little spooked chicken? Silver sulked.
No, she didn't say that.
She didn't come back to the barn and call a meeting announcing that Silver, the so-called prize winner and future queen of this whole herd, had turned and run away for her life from an unseen enemy.
She didn't say any of that,
Goatina said, and she gave Silver a nudge that was a little bit closer to a butt.
Come on, get up.
What is everyone saying about me?
Nothing.
Goatina stamped her hoof.
No one talks about you. Yeah, we all know you're a prize winner and you're probably going to keep pushing us around for the rest of our lives. No one cares.
You came to laugh at me.
Didn't neither.
Silver finally turned her enormous silver-frosted head to look up at Goatina. Why did you come looking for me then? Goatina dished out a third nudge that could be called a slow-motion butt. She jabbed her teeny little horns into Silver's backside.
Because
Goatina shuffled her hooves.
I want to go explore Ruby One-Horn's barn. And I need someone really big and tough by my side.
Slowly, Silver drew herself up to sitting. Why me? Why don't you get your sister Mangoed? I mean, sure, she's nowhere near as big as me, or as strong as me. She's scrappy, I'll give her that, but I can beat her every single time. So, you came to ask Silver for help. I see, of course. I guess it's only natural that you would choose me, Silver, the greatest of them all. Silver got up. So, you're sure no one is out there saying I'm a coward?
Nope.
Silver took a step forward into a beam of sunlight that fell through the door and let it illuminate her glossy coat, her perfectly proportioned muscles. All right, I'll do it. I'll take you to Ruby One-Horn's barn.
Thank you for listening. That was episode 7 of the Good American novel. I gotta tell ya, we are taking a spring break. We're taking the entire month of April off. We have to plant the garden. We have to deworm the goats. We gotta rest our voices. We gotta tighten up the next bunch of scripts. So it's going to be a little while before you hear a regular episode again, but we are going to have some fun bonus material in between the break. So follow us on Instagram. There'll definitely be goat videos, goats in the spring, cats in the garden. There's going to be some of that. Come and follow us, Goat American Novel on Instagram. Please, if you're enjoying the podcast, share it with a friend or some friends. You can rate us on Apple Podcasts. That's really helpful. Helps us find our audience. And while we're away on spring break, we would love to hear from you. Shoot us an email, goatamericannovel@gmail.com. Let us know who's listening, who you're listening with. We'd love to hear about it. Please send us your questions. We would like to know. One thing that you may not know is a great deal of what is in the Goat American novel is inspired by real life characters and events. So shoot us an email. Why don't you ask us? Let us know what you think, what is real and what is not. We'd love to hear it. We'd love to answer your questions someday in a little bonus content. So send us your questions, please. And yeah, tune in next month. We'll see you in May. Okay. Have a great springtime. Have a great April. Take care of each other.